A great white shark can detect a single drop of blood dissolved in an entire Olympic-sized swimming pool. That sounds impressive, right up until you look at human biology. Your nose can detect the chemical scent of rain at an astonishing 5 parts per trillion. You can smell wet dirt significantly better than an apex ocean predator smells blood. And that opens a very weird evolutionary door. It means our relationship with a sudden downpour is not a casual aesthetic preference. It isn't a cozy mood you picked up from a lo-fi playlist or a coffee commercial. It is an ancient, hardwired biological imperative. For your entire life, you've treated the scent of an approaching thunderstorm as a pleasant backdrop to an indoor afternoon. You pull a blanket over your shoulders, watch the droplets, hit the window pane, and feel an immediate, unprompted wave of absolute peace. Your heart rate slows. Your nervous system settles. That reaction is a neurological illusion. In the cold, calculating bookkeeping of natural selection, feeling deeply comforted by an environmental event that can easily freeze you to death sounds like a catastrophic design flaw. Rain ruins visibility. It turns stable ground into slippery rock. It destroys tracking conditions and threatens the one tool that keeps you at the top of the food chain: fire. By all accounts of primate survival, the sky opening up should trigger a hard, frantic alarm response inside your brain. It should make you run. It should make you panic. Instead, it makes you breathe in deeply. To understand why, you have to look past the modern concrete envelope you live inside. You have to look at the chemistry of the dirt itself. The scent you are actually inhaling isn't water. Water has no smell. What you are tracking is a volatile organic compound called geosmin, paired with an oily secretion known as petrichor. Geosmin is manufactured deep underground by a specific class of soil-dwelling bacteria called actinomycetes. When dry periods parch the landscape, these microscopic organisms slow down their activity and produce spores as a defensive survival mechanism. They wait. They bide their time in the dust. Then the rain arrives. As a raindrop hits the parched earth, it traps tiny pockets of air beneath it. These air pockets rush upward through the water droplet, bursting out into the atmosphere as a fine, invisible mist of aerosols. It is a literal biological broadcast system. The wind catches that microscopic cloud of geosmin and sweeps it miles ahead of the actual storm front, creating a chemical warning light that travels through the air at the speed of the breeze. Long before the first physical drop touches your skin, the broadcast hits your face. Your nostrils widen. The signal enters your nasal cavity, bypasses your conscious logical brain entirely, and locks directly into your oldest emotional circuits. Think about what that direct access means. Evolution does not build hypersensitive chemical detectors for fun. It is too expensive. Every sensory receptor on your body is a piece of biological infrastructure that requires calories to build and maintenance to run. If your brain went out of its way to dedicate an extraordinary amount of neural real estate to tracking a microscopic compound floating in the breeze, it did so because failing to smell it meant your lineage ended in the dirt. Between about 7 and 5 million years ago, the African landscape was changing. Forests were breaking apart, woodlands vanished, and our ancestors stepped into a harsher mosaic of scrub, trees, and open ground where shade was unreliable and the sun became a daily physical force. In that environment, drought wasn't a temporary inconvenience. It was a brutal, multi-month eradication campaign. Rivers evaporated into cracked mud. Vegetation dried into brittle, yellow tinder. The large game herds, the antelopes, the zebras, the wildebeests, didn't hang around waiting for you to find them. They moved. They fled the dust. They walked for miles chasing the distant, volatile promise of green grass, and our ancestors followed them. Imagine a small band of primates moving across a sun-scorched plain. You are slow. You don't have fangs. You don't have wings. Your endurance is your primary weapon, but endurance requires fuel, and fuel requires hydration. If your group wanders in the wrong direction for 48 hours, the math of your survival simply stops working. You overheat, you dry out, and you collapse. This is where the chemical broadcast becomes a literal lifesaver. When a sudden storm broke miles away, the wind carried the message long before the clouds ever covered your sun. To an ancient hunter-gatherer, the sudden explosion of geosmin in the air wasn't a prompt to look out a window. It was a biological GPS coordinate. It was an olfactory arrow pointing across the horizon. It told the group exactly where the landscape was coming back to life. It signaled rising water holes, emerging plants, and tracking conditions that were about to become perfect. because the moment the rain stops, the entire game of survival shifts. Arid, dusty earth preserves nothing. It is a blank slate that conceals the footprints of everything you want to hunt, but add water, and the ground transforms into a forensic map. The mud preserves deep, sharp, and intensely detailed impressions. You can see exactly how many animals passed by, how heavy they were, how fast they were moving, and precisely when their hooves pressed into the fresh earth. The rain didn't just bring water, it turned the earth into an open library. But to read that library, you had to get there first. The tribes that could smell the storm front earliest reached the fresh water sources before anyone else. They secured the resources, dug the emerging tubers from the softened soil, and tracked the disoriented game. The individuals born with slightly mutated, slightly more sensitive olfactory receptors lived longer. They had more children. They passed that hyper-tuned sensitivity down the family tree. You are the direct result of that optimization. You are the ape that survived because your great-grandparents could smell a thunderstorm from 3 horizons away. But if the chemical broadcast was a signal of opportunity, the physical arrival of the storm was an immediate, high-stakes crisis. Modern humans look at rain and see an excuse to cancel outdoor plans, make coffee, and sink into a couch. We treat it like a peaceful background texture for a slow afternoon. For our ancestors, it was a biological ambush. The second the clouds burst, the environment transformed from a predictable home into a multi-layered death trap. The first and most immediate enemy was thermodynamics. A hairless primate is a masterpiece of cooling engineering under a scorching midday sun, but it is an absolute catastrophe when the temperature drops and water falls with it. A wet human body dumps heat up to 25 times faster than a dry one. Without synthetic fabrics, without a modern waterproof jacket, a prolonged downpour in anything below 50 degrees Fahrenheit isn't just uncomfortable, it is a ticking clock. Hypothermia creeps into your muscles, your fingers grow stiff, your limbs refuse to obey commands. A simple slip on rocky terrain out in the brush doesn't mean an annoying trip to the clinic. It means you are finished. The second threat was structural layout. To escape the rain, your brain naturally tells you to seek shelter, but the landscape doesn't always play fair. Caves and rock shelters, the prime real estate of the Paleolithic world, are fundamentally drainage basins. They often sit right at the base of steep hillsides or directly beside rising river systems. A heavy, continuous week of rain means flash floods. Archaeologists digging through prehistoric sites frequently find thick layers of sterile flood sediment sandwiched directly between layers of human tools and ash. The water rushed in while the families were huddled together. In many cases, the mud was so deep and the memory so terrifying that the cave was abandoned for generations. Reality itself broke. And the third enemy was space compression. You are not the only animal trying to stay dry. When the sky turns into a deluge, every predator on the savanna has the exact same realization you do: find a roof. The landscape suddenly shrinks. Humans, hyenas, and apex cats are violently squeezed into the same narrow, dark, rocky spaces simultaneously. In several cave sites across South Africa, the fossil record preserves human bones mixed directly with the remains of large predators in the same historical layers. Some of those human skulls have pairs of perfectly round puncture marks stamped directly into the bone. They match the canine spacing of a hunting leopard with forensic precision. Rain didn't just bring water. It crowded the dark with things that had teeth. In the middle of this subterranean crowding, one job mattered more than everything else combined: keeping the fire alive. And here is the terrifying truth behind that responsibility. For the vast majority of our history, early humans could control fire, but they could not reliably create it from scratch. Making fire out of nothing is a remarkably difficult physics problem. For hundreds of thousands of years, most people probably didn't know how to do it. If your fire went out during a week-long downpour, it stayed out. You couldn't just spin a stick in the wet mud or strike wet flint and hope for a miracle. You became vulnerable. So, humans developed a literal biological infrastructure for fire preservation. They carried embers with them. They packed smoldering coals inside specialized carriers, wrapped tightly in green leaves, or embedded deep within tinder fungus, a woody mushroom that grows on the sides of trees. Tinder fungus is essentially a biological lighter. It can hold a microscopic spark inside its dents, felt like core, and keep it smoldering quietly for hours, completely shielded from the elements. When the rain hammered down, one person's entire survival task was just sitting next to that smoldering core, shielding it with their body, feeding it dry wood split open from the center of wet logs, ensuring that the tiny orange heart did not die. Because if it died, the group faced a collective catastrophe. The fire was your only shield against hypothermia. It was the only weapon that kept leopards from sliding into the back of the cave. And critically, it was the engine of your social world, forced into a tight, dark space for days on end. The campfire transformed from a tactical tool into a psychological anchor. Anthropologists studying modern hunter-gatherers have noted a profound shift in human behavior once the sun goes down or the rain forces people inside. During the day, conversations are transactional. They are about resources, tracking, territory, and labor. But around a fire, trapped by a storm, the dialogue shifts dramatically. Over 80% of the conversation becomes stories, songs, and ceremonies. The flickering light softens, faces, and reduces tribal tension. It drops the social defenses of a hyper-competitive primate. People talk and people listen. They share the locations of distant water holes, the properties of medicinal plants, and the legends of ancestors who survived even greater floods. The rainy day wasn't dead time. It was transmission time. It was the original social network, forging the cooperative bonds that allowed a weak primate to conquer the planet. Let's look at the chemistry of that comfort again. We've established that your nose is a piece of hyper-tuned prehistoric military hardware, capable of sorting through parts per trillion in the breeze. But why does it make you feel good? Why does the smell of rain trigger immediate, deep neurological relief instead of a panicked flight response? The answer lies in what that smell promises. In a world dictated by the unforgiving ecology of the African savanna, rain was the ultimate game changer. It was the literal end of a starvation campaign. When a landscape is parched for months, plants shut down their growth, water supplies turn into dusty death traps, and animal herds vanish across the horizon. The world enters a state of high alert stasis. But when that invisible cloud of geosmin sweeps through the scrubland, it signals a complete biological reset. The drought is over. The underground root structures are about to soften and push fresh, nutrient-dense tubers through the earth. The wild berry bushes are about to bloom. The local watering holes, which had shrunk into stagnant pools teeming with deadly parasites, are about to be flushed clean with fresh, running water. Your brain doesn't just hear the weather, it hears the arrival of absolute abundance. And this is where the oily side of the equation enters the frame. The term petrichor was coined in the 1960s by two researchers studying the physics of dry rocks and clay while working for a scientific laboratory. It comes from the Greek words petra, meaning stone, and ichor, the mythical fluid that ran through the veins of the gods. During long, dry stretches, plants secrete volatile oils into the soil and surrounding rocks to halt seed germination, preventing new life from accidentally sprouting when there isn't enough water to support it. It is a chemical pause button. When the humidity spikes and the rain finally shatters that rock seal, these oils are blasted into the air along with the bacterial geosmin. It is the literal smell of a planet waking up from a defensive sleep. For a social primate whose entire life cycle depended on tracking seasonal abundance, inhaling that specific combination was the ultimate sign that it was finally safe to drop your guard. Your ancestors didn't just survive the storm, they celebrated it. The deep primitive peace you feel right now, listening to the thunder from the safety of your home, is the chemical ghost of a prehistoric tracker telling your nervous system that the water has arrived, the food is on its way, and for the next few days, you are going to survive. But this creates a strange, contemporary collision, because you don't live on the savanna anymore. You don't hunt antelopes, and you don't dig tubers out of the mud with a sharpened stick. You live in a world where food is wrapped in plastic, water flows out of a metal tap on command, and the temperature of your room is dictated by a thermostat on the wall rather than the rotation of the earth. We have built an incredible, high-tech fortress designed specifically to insulate ourselves from the chaotic, unpredictable forces of nature. We pavement the dirt, construct drainage systems to route water safely away into subterranean pipes, and buy blackout curtains to keep the morning sun from interrupting our sleep cycles. By all metrics of modern civilization, we have won the war against the elements. Except your brain doesn't know that yet. Underneath your modern clothing, your smartphones, and your daily economic routines, your nervous system is still running the exact same Paleolithic survival software that was optimized for the African savanna. This is what evolutionary biologists call a classic case of evolutionary mismatch. The biological hardware inside your skull expects one very specific, raw environment, but your modern reality provides something completely different. And the friction between those two worlds produces some truly strange psychological side effects. Consider how you operate inside a modern office building or a suburban home when a severe storm rolls through. The sky turns a deep, bruised indigo, the wind picks up, and the first wave of geosmin hits the asphalt outside. Even though you are completely safe, even though you have a solid roof over your head and enough food in the refrigerator to survive a 2-week quarantine, your brain immediately drops everything else it was doing. The spreadsheets lose their urgency. The email inbox stops feeling like a life or death crisis. You walk over to the window, look out at the downpour, and let out a long, slow breath. That sudden sense of calm isn't just relief that you don't have to go outside. It is your ancient threat detection algorithm quietly switching itself off. In a world of concrete and glass, our brains are under constant, low-grade stress because we are surrounded by variables we were never evolved to understand. Traffic sounds, notifications, artificial lighting, and crowded spaces filled with complete strangers. We are hyper-vigilant apes operating under the constant pressure of a modern landscape. But the smell of rain breaks the algorithm. It overrides the modern static. When the wind delivers that potent mixture of bacterial spores and plant oils to your nostrils, it satisfies an ancient, subconscious checklist. The deep primitive architecture of your mind interprets the storm as a guarantee of resource renewal, weaponized hunting conditions, and collective safety around a shared shelter. The ancient tracker waking up inside your nervous system looks around your climate-controlled apartment, hears the thunder, smells the petrichor, and realizes that the ultimate environmental emergency has just been resolved. The world is resetting, the famine is breaking, and for a brief, beautiful moment, you are legally permitted to sit still and simply survive. This is the hidden poetry written directly into your biology. The feeling of deep, unshakable comfort that sweeps over you when a storm hits isn't a modern luxury or a sentimental quirk. It is a physical bridge spanning 300,000 years of human survival. It is a chemical thread that ties your hyper-efficient, screen-obsessed, modern life straight back to the parched landscapes of the Pleistocene savanna. We like to look at our skyscrapers, our global supply chains, and our machines that can land on other planets, and imagine that we have completely outgrown the natural world. We treat our ancient history like a museum exhibit, something distant, primitive, and completely separated from the civilized lives we perform every morning. But your nervous system doesn't care about your technology. It doesn't read your calendar or check your bank account. It listens to the earth. It responds to the breeze. And it keeps tracking the environment with the forensic precision of an elite survival machine. So, the next time the sky turns a dark, heavy gray, and you hear the first distant growl of thunder vibrating through the ground, don't just close the window and switch on an artificial light. Step closer to the pane, breathe in, take a long, slow breath, and let that sharp, earthy aroma fill your lungs. When you inhale that scent, you are not just smelling the weather. You are experiencing an unbroken biological inheritance. You are tracking the exact same molecular broadcast that told your ancestors the drought was breaking, the game was returning, and the water was safe to drink. You are feeling the exact same relief that settled over a small, vulnerable band of primates as they moved closer together around a flickering campfire inside a dark rock shelter, checking the horizon, shielding their fire, and realizing that they had successfully outrun the dust for one more season. The great white shark will keep tracking its drop of blood through the vast, indifferent darkness of the ocean, optimized perfectly for a predatory universe of water and iron. And you will keep tracking the rain. You will keep scanning the wind for parts per trillion of a soil bacterium and a parched plant oil, driven by an instinct older than your language. We are not cleanly separated from the cave or the savanna. We are simply modified apes carrying the beautifully preserved tools of our survival inside our modern chests. You love the smell of rain because that bare skin, that hyper-tuned nose, and that ancient sensory software are the exact reasons your ancestors kept moving when the rest of the world had to stop. The hunt is over, the fortress is built, but inside your nose, the rain is still bringing you home.